So Alison and Lawrence, thank you very much for being here. We had a very interesting discussion this morning in our alumni conference, 200 people listening. We talked about the Rio conference and what the Rio conference implies for development cooperation. We should try to focus on the most important issues which we got from our discussion. Lawrence, what did you take?
Well, lots of sort of elephants in the room. The one that I really am very keen on and want Rio Plus to really focus on is growth. I think we have a very uncritical view of growth. All economic growth is good, but we know it has very different implications for resource use, for poverty reduction. And so we need to start thinking about it in a way that's similar to the way we think about technology. Sometimes technology can be a really good thing, sometimes not. And it's all about the governance.
Maybe one question. You are working on poverty reduction, hunger issues. So is poverty reduction and reducing hunger without growth possible?
That's a really good question. It can be. It depends on the type of growth. There are certainly lots of instances where hunger and poverty reduction don't go down when economic growth is happening. We know it has to be broad-based, it has to be based on good equality, and it has to be generated by people who are living in poverty for them to benefit the most. The real trick for Rio will be trying to figure out how do you produce food, reduce hunger, and promote sustainability, and that's really difficult.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Alison, your elephant in the room regarding Rio and the impacts for our development agenda.
Well, I certainly was very struck by all of our discussion this morning, how much of the focus came back to the issue of global governance. And really the question of, in this highly interdependent world in which we're now living, where we are acutely aware of the need for more effective global problem solving. In fact, we have a global governance system that's not really fit for purpose. There is a huge question of how we resolve issues as an international community at the moment, and I think the track record of late is that we're not particularly good at it. So going into Rio+20, but also even before that, in the Busan discussion in the end of November around the future of the agenda on aid effectiveness, and also leading up to the post-2015 discussions that will take place not too far away, I think it's a real question of what kind of global governance solutions do we need. And there was talk today about, need to think more about different coalitions for different problems that will come together, cutting across old and new boundaries of cooperation, public, private, governmental, non-governmental, in order to be more effective problem-solving forum for these interplanetary problems that we're facing today.
Okay, so this is about collective action problems on the global level, actually. Do you see interesting pilots where we do make progress?
Well, I think there are, and I think some of those are coming up now from the regional level, where we see quite strong coalitions of interest at a regional level to try and begin to tackle shared problems. So whether one looks through the lens of increasing regional cooperation around aspects of trade and investment, or some of the new initiatives which has G20 backing around, for example, investment in infrastructure in Africa. And these are ways of, to some extent, short-circuiting some of the challenges that international institutions now face in terms of voice, representativity, and the ability to act, and coming up with more novel, slightly more local, but also multi-partner solutions to these problems that cut across borders.
Okay, so there are actually examples where we are making progress. We need to spread these kind of experiences.
I think so, and we also need better metrics for assessing effectiveness in the context of these new coalitions.
Yeah. Okay, so I would like to come to my elephant, which I found very important. Rio is about growth, Lawrence, actually, and Rio is about how to organize growth. And the point which I would like to emphasize is that on the other side of the hunger and poverty reduction agenda, there is a growing wealth creation machinery in the global economy, which is creating sustainability problems and climate change issues. So we need also to learn beyond the poverty reduction thing that we have to build a global low-carbon economy within a very limited space of time, which is a huge challenge, also in terms of global outreach, because this has to do something which not only OECD countries have to push forward. We need all these emerging powers on board. My perception is that we are at a certain tipping point. If we look into global firms or global organizations, we do have the old growth agenda, so business as usual, but we also do have now, in comparison with 20 years ago, very strong green sustainability-oriented organizations within the same framework. So if you go to Siemens has a very strong organizational pattern now towards sustainable development. If you look into the World Bank, there is, of course, the classical growth debate on the one hand side, but now the low carbon perspectives are very strong within the World Bank. So there is a tipping point, and the question is, what can we as think tanks do to move things into the right direction? Do you have a quick answer to that? Our role?
I think the role of government, actually, our role is to sort of communicate to government and provide the evidence to governments that there are certain, I think, fairly small things they can do, politically big, but technically small things they can do to really leverage this latent demand to do more on the green side, both from consumers and producers. But I think also for civil society, we've got to get better at measuring who really is committed to green growth agenda, which private sector company do I really want to invest in, what's my government doing? And I think it's really quite difficult to assess that at the moment.
Okay. Alison, your last point.
I think we've got a very important role to play in bringing together new conversations between different kinds of actors and constituencies, shaking off a little bit perhaps the tradition of just convening governmental conversations or non-governmental in separate spaces. We need to be more creative in the way we convene, because so many of the agendas that we're now focusing on are more, synergistic. You can't have a growth discussion without having a sustainability discussion, or at least we shouldn't. So part of it is about convening new actors. I think it's also about possibly letting go of the notion that we need to wait for consensus to act. I suspect what recent experience now tells us is where the evidence is compelling, we need to act. And the need for consensus, certainly at the global level, is something we can be waiting for too long before we actually make the changes we need to make.
Okay, so thank you very much to both of you for this hopefully interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.